Copyright disclaimer. Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Bill. I finally saw Strange World and I want to talk about it, review it, and I don't know, just kind of discuss it. It is the 61st animated film from Disney Animation Studios. Fun fact. I don't want to get too bogged down into things that happen outside of the film. In any of the content I make, whether it's about music or animation or movies, shows, whatever, I just like talking about the thing. But I do want to touch on how this movie was given, in my opinion, a lot more obstacles than I think it deserved. Because honestly, I thought this was a Disney Plus original movie that was dropping around the holidays. I didn't even know it was going to be released in theaters. I recently discovered it was released in theaters, and I thought, okay, maybe it was a limited theatrical run, so it could be up for some awards or something. It didn't have to be sandwiched between two tentpole other Disney projects that are sequels to really big franchises. It was right between Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and then Avatar 2, The Way of Water. Both of those movies are still in theaters as I'm recording this. To say it's spoiler free at the top of this, we'll get into spoilers as we go. You'd think this would have been dropped in the spring, maybe in April. I feel like it's really quickly becoming underrated, so I also just wanted to talk about it earnestly, break down what happens in the movie, give my thoughts along the way, and yeah, like and subscribe, blah, 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 YouTube words. Strange World was written by Ki Nguyen, who also co-directed it with Don Hall. Ki Nguyen was also a writer for Raya the Last Dragon, and was a creative leader on Encanto, which, speaking of Encanto, it's hard to follow Encanto, so let's just get that out of the way. I appreciate the similarities in theme, especially touching on generational trauma and dysfunctional families. After turning red at Encanto, I feel like this movie should have come out maybe a couple years ago. It's interesting to see it scratch the surface after holes have been dug, support beams have been put in, and it's open for business. Tourists can go through it. It's so safe. These tunnels. Weird analogy, but I think it works. I know it's notoriously becoming one of Disney's rare animated movies failing at the box office. Flopping. Anyway, and I'd make a Treasure Planet joke here if I had seen that movie. If you want me to do a video about it, would love to. There's one other Treasure Planet joke. Stay tuned. So this movie starts with a really fun callback to those old action serial, deep in the mountains, there's explorers. And it's very reminiscent of Indiana Jones kind of storytelling, those action serials that inspired that. It also has a comic book flavor to it, as it does at the very end as we close the book on the story. Those visuals are really cool and really engaging. I love the way that they pop. I love the big grandiose theme song that Jaeger Clade, the grandfather of this family, has, wrestling beasts and grows a mighty beard, and he has a son, Searcher. It's hard not saying Searcher I hardly, Jaeger I hardly, Searcher I hardly. I'll just get it out of my system now. I need everyone in the comments to Searcher I hardly and Jaeger I hardly for me. Please and thank you. I can't, it's too many. He's taking his son Searcher on an expedition through the mountains because this society of people has never seen life outside of this mountain range that surrounds the society, the city, the nation that they live in. It's the least explored thing, is the city that we're trying to preserve and save. No one knows what's on the other side of these mountains. He's an explorer, an adventurer, and he wants to go conquer the mountains and bring his son with him. When they go on this expedition with a very small crew, his son Searcher finds a berry, later to be named Pando. It sort of exudes an electricity that can be harnessed and turned into energy. Excited at this discovery, Searcher says, well, if this trip is so dangerous, let's take this back. We're looking for something to improve our lives. This could be it. They get into a fight. The father gives his son a compass and says, take this, go home. And the crew goes with him, one of whom is Callisto, who becomes the president of Avalonia. I had to write it down because I think they only say it a couple of times. Through this discovery, turns out Searcher is right, and by growing these, they look kind of like Brussels sprouts, but also grapes. I kept calling them battery berries. These battery berries, turns out, can indeed become a source of fuel, and it propels them over 25 years as we go to present time. 25 years later, here we are, and those berries can indeed power anything from a coffee maker to the streetlights, cars, and airships, but it propels them into a more modern looking society. It kind of threw me off balance. He stays a farmer with like a simple farm with this very important crop. You think he'd be like some 1%er billionaire in charge of all this energy or government leader, but nope, he's a simple farmer. And I find that weirdly admirable considering they sell this character thematically as egotistical because he's projecting the farming life that he's cultivated for himself onto his son. Now he is the papa. Now he is the father who's not listening, and he and his wife have a son, Ethan, who is our main character, even though it's shared amongst Searcher and Ethan, the son. The cycle is continuing in its own way. We see what Searcher has now made for himself as a father in his own family. He and his wife and his son tend to the Pando farm, and he's given credit as the father of Pando, the bringer of the electricity in this new age of technology, so much so that they have built a statue of him next to his father in town square, also next to other members. You don't see them very well, but they are also there. They're not just the only two people with statues. I appreciate the metaphor until I think about it too much. It comes up a lot. There's other people there too. It's I don't know. I appreciate what they're going for, and I wish we had spent more time in the town or seen what life is like before the Pando berries, but I got it after a second watch and wanting that answer for myself that, yeah, I guess if we went from, oh, look at him go, he's going up the mountain, to like flying cars. It's an antiquated visual at the beginning, and then 25 years later, they've passed us in technology. They have flying cars and motorbikes and stuff. Cool. I just wish we had seen more of the town or understood more of the life and the city and the culture that's at stake here. We do see the family having a lot of fun, which I really like. I like anything down to, oh, mom and dad, yuck, you're kissing, and they have an adorable dog, and when they make dinner, they dance, and they're all goofy and silly, and the dad reveals himself early as a little overbearing. The wife's trying to remind him of boundaries. I like seeing the dynamic between Ethan and his dad, and then Ethan and his dad and the guy that he's crushing on. I like even giving those little moments. He takes his hat. It's a great hat, by the way. And we see the first person to directly give him support. They're all geeking out about the new tabletop game that they all enjoy, Primal Outpost, and they all got new pieces. Ethan gets farmer. He doesn't want to be a farmer, so let me trade you. This one even looks like you. Haha, wasn't your grandpa an explorer? Like, it's a very nice, warm, supportive moment from this character we barely see, totaling, I think, 2 minutes in the runtime of this movie of like gay things, and everyone's freaking out about it, and it's like, oh no. Anyway, I like those little moments. I wish we had more time with Ethan interacting with other kids. I kind of wish that this movie was like a mini series on Disney Plus. If we were going to abandon it on the theater end. We see Ethan and his dad have positive, typical family dynamic. Dad, you're embarrassing me. Aw, kiddo, when I was your age. Like, there's a lot of love, there's a lot of warmth. However, then when we start to get on the topic of, I wish I knew what grandpa was like, we have a really great heart to heart, and we see that there is something missing in their relationship. Not only is Searcher, the father, neglecting the wants and dreams of his son, Ethan, but also Searcher doesn't talk about his father. But also he's crazy famous, so everybody knows who this guy is and what he does and did. And to Searcher, everyone else saw him as a hero, but to me, he was just a bad dad. I wish we explored that more, because he's a humble farmer. I wanted to see him be larger than life. Like, yeah, people wave to him, but that feels the same as if he owned a little independent shop and is dropping off his berries. It feels more like Beauty and the Beast. Here comes the baker with his tray like always. And if we're gonna play into ego, I kind of wish we saw him be larger than life in his own way, just like his dad. They go into town, they do their thing, they come back, they're having dinner, they're having fun, we're dancing with our three-legged dog legend, and then suddenly, call to action. The president, Callisto, who was on that expedition, yet also is a stranger to the family. I feel like we could have used this as an opportunity where everyone kind of knows each other better. Searcher needs to come with her. Something's wrong with the Pando. We see that something might be wrong with the Pando. The batteries are running quickly after the wife is using the crop duster to dust the crops. I don't know farm things. It's not in Stardew Valley, so I don't know it. Turns out this problem is even worse in the Northeast. Already a great foreshadowing for the big twist at the end. However, this Pando, there's something wrong. There's a disease, and it's just a matter of time until it spreads all over the place. And then they have to add even to your farm. And I'm like, I think it already kind of affects him because it's his invention, his discovery, his responsibility. And that's kind of the vibe. And off he goes to join them at going through a crater that was found to figure out what's wrong with the roots, why it's failing, what's happening to this plant we use as energy. He can't take his family. Okay. He wants his son to stay behind and be safe. Okay. Mom's gonna watch the kid. Already my first of very few issues. I wish the family was the crew. The mom is a very experienced pilot. She's only a part of this story because Ethan runs away and stows away on the ship, and the mom tries to stop them before it's too late. We're stuck in the crater. There's a huge crash. The pilot dies. Rest in peace, pilot Captain Three Lines. He's dead. And so Mom takes over as pilot. I wish Mom was just enlisted to be the pilot. It's odd that we have this sort of nameless crew. There's even a captain who isn't Callisto. Callisto's there as president. There's a couple of other people on board who are like researchers. There's this whole sub ensemble that barely gets to do anything but be there. I wish it was like purely the family. Now the dad is forced against his will to have his family on his expedition. It's still a nice parallel. I wish Mom had the credentials to be there too, as opposed to kind of lucking into it after someone dies. They crash land. Searcher and the dog are separated from everyone else. The dog's there too. And now the focus is repairing the ship and finding searching for Searcher. I wish one person had said that. As we journey into the center of the earth to this land of the lost, we see the Pando is glowing brighter, and it's unfortunate that it's so green. It was very reminiscent of Encanto. I'm like, we couldn't have changed the color, but I like that the color was like so artificial and like this neon green. I love that the first time we see it, it's through a distorted lens of a block of ice. There's a lot of great setup with just Pando itself through this movie for its big reveal. I like how it's misleading because it's this organic energy substance. To us running so much on gas, oil, and fossil fuels, it seems organic and safe. I love the way this world is presented. I love everything down to like the textures as well as the vibrancy of the colors. Everything's mysterious and wonderful, and like it ties into like dinosaur imagery so well. That's a fun little reference to other films like Land of the Lost and things. And it's genuinely gorgeous to look at. Spoilers now. From here on out, they reference in dialogue a couple of times, oh, we need to find the heart of the problem and the root of the problem. Like they kind of intersperse heart and root. The glow looks like a heartbeat. They keep setting you up for the fact that the planet itself is a living organism, which I thought was a metaphor. Turns out it's not just a metaphor. It's great foreshadowing. It's also so direct that it kind of makes everything feel on the nose, as opposed to, I see what we were going for. However, this topic is an ongoing current problem. We need to be taking better care of our planet. Being subtle and inconvenient has not serviced the point being driven home here. So I appreciate being direct. It's frustrating we have to be that direct. I liked it. I noticed it right away and didn't feel like it was a big twist or reveal. I thought that's what we were going for. Grass is a living thing. Trees are a living thing. I've seen Fern Gully. Can't you feel its pain? It's pain. It kind of felt a little too on the nose, but I still really loved it. I just didn't think it was as big of a reveal as the movie was like selling it as towards the end. But as we enter this squishy new world full of wondrous creatures, Searcher is on his own with his dog Legend. He runs into all these creatures. Everything's mysterious and strange. Are they dangerous? Are they safe? What's going on? They seem to be attacking him. And then he runs into his father, Jaeger. Turns out he couldn't climb over the mountain, so he thought it'd be easier to go under through a cave. And we're told in this flashback, the only other flashback besides the prologue, but it's done through like storyboard with no animation. It almost comes across like a budget cut. I wish we had gotten the same as the prologue, or even like the prologue's like comic booky look, but the music isn't right. Or as we see the different like panels, they're like maybe ripped or burnt around the edges over time. The paper is aged or worn or torn. You could have done something really cool that's reminiscent of the prologue. Instead, it was like really great, thoroughly detailed storyboard, and it was odd. It still looked lovely. Those are lovely paintings. I want make the drawings move with your witchcraft magic. Animation is the devil's medium. It was just odd to see the stagnant images. We learn that Jaeger is still alive. There's a little bit of comedy there, but we start to see, he's still the person he was when last we saw him was Searcher 25 years prior. There's also a strange moment where, again, to sort of stop and have a meta joke or commentary on itself or on Disney, we stopped to say mom is gone, but he meant mom left, but he meant mom moved on. And we don't see her until the very end of the movie with no dialogue. Did you mean mom left? Like left you? Like you don't speak to her either? Or were you just trying to make a haha Disney doesn't keep both your parents most of the time joke. It was kind of off-putting, and they do this a couple of times, and I wish they wouldn't do that. We're trying to balance so many things. The metaphor is so big. It kind of worked better in things like Frozen, where it is the Disney princess movie. Like, you met and got engaged in the same day? Like, that's fun. That's part of the story, not, haha, mom dead, not dead. It was very bizarre. I did like seeing Yeager kind of throw a bit of like a tantrum. Ooh, I hate Sheldon, even though I've never met him. Like, it shows that he's immature. It shows that this time has not been kind to him. He hasn't taken this isolation to reflect or wish he had done things differently. He's still the same person, which is a little disappointing. It would be cool to see an abrasive, distant father heal over time and then see the son as an adult try to come to terms with that and then reflect in what he's doing similarly in his relationship with his son. But it is what it is. We also get introduced to a character that will later be named Splat, which gets a joke about merchandising, which again pulls me out in a weird way. I don't know why. Usually I like meta humor, but it just didn't work here. Maybe because I was already going in with the Disney Plus confusion. I don't know. But we meet Splat. We learn later that he's a sort of like a white blood cell. Like he's kind of a piece of the immune system response that this environment has because it's a living thing. We start to split our focus between the father-son reunion with everybody back at the ship, and I Googled it. In my Encanto video, I referenced that Mirabelle is a young adult. Some people got mad at that. She's 15. Young adult, to me, doesn't mean adult. I don't know. But Ethan is 16. He's in that young adult age. You're not an adult yet, but you can take on some responsibilities, drive certain things if you practice hard enough. You can get certain jobs in certain places. Like, you can have more responsibility. And the mom surprisingly just tells him, go hang out in the cockpit. One of the crewmates is like, oh, we'll play games, and lists a couple of games that sound kind of like Candyland and Chutes and Ladders. It's very odd to completely dismiss the teenager and then wonder why this teenager, this kid who wants to help and be a part of this and prove himself, then runs off on his own to go help and prove himself. It felt very disconnected. Mom seemed a lot more down to earth than that, but we're also in a time of crisis. She also just got promoted to pilot. It was just an odd moment, but a setup for, I'm here to blaze my own path and figure out my own thing. This is my opportunity for adventure. I want to be an explorer. Off he goes to find his dad. And I like seeing Yeager and Searcher struggle in the logistics, but excel physically. Despite saying Searcher is weak when he's a farmer, he does things. It's odd trying to characterize the dad as weaker than his very buff father when he's a farmer, and that would... Anyway, I also think it would have been fun to see Searcher be good at climbing and survival skills and things like that, so he chose not to be an explorer, not he just can't because he puny small, if that makes any sense. But I like seeing how Ethan connects with the land better, but he fails to traverse the land the way that they do. He doesn't climb, he falls. And when he runs into Splat, he trusts the creature, follows the creature, and then slowly befriends the creature. They run into a box of Pando that fell off of the ship. Ethan stores it because he doesn't want it to go to waste, and it turns out touching the Pando berry will hurt Splat. Splat is a creature from this world, and it's interesting to see something like Pando hurt Splat. Ethan instantly apologizes, gives him a little bandana as a bandage. It's this nice little moment. We see Ethan start to connect with the land as opposed to burning it down with a flamethrower, despite the path that he blazes a trail through always unblazing. 024, unblaze it. We see how different their experiences are because of how different they are as people. Ethan doesn't want to be like his dad doesn't want him to be like his grandpa, and Ethan is just fundamentally not like either of them. Searcher informs his dad the two of them have statues in town square. His dad is condescending. What, they give statues to everybody now? I don't think you could explain to someone who lived in a world of horses and buggies what a radio and a television is. So I understand him not understanding. For the story's sake, I wish he could comprehend on some level what his son did, or get excited about the airship and your berries did all this. Just a little moment. But the condescending is nice. I like how they're both a little self-absorbed, but again, I start to ask who commissioned these statues, and also they're statues of other people. It's a little messy to keep bringing up the statues, but I like the kind of having a statue measuring contest, if you will. Seeing how dismissive and the general animosity between the two, it's a nice way to start that. It sets up nicely with the big action moment where Jaeger is saving Ethan from the tentacle creatures because Splat's job is to bring them there. Here he is saving the day, slow-mo, what a hero. I wish we had circled back to the whole he's burning everything thing. I feel like Grandpa weirdly got off the hook for his destructive relationship with the environment. It does work nicely at bringing forth the fear that Searcher has that Ethan, his son, will grow up to be like his grandpa Jaeger. I like how it speaks more to his insecurities and his experiences and his unresolved feelings as opposed to, my son can't dance and do basketball. What's happening? I like how it's more internal in that way. We have a very confusing car chase scene where we brought 2 bikes and everyone stayed on one just so we could throw one, but it looks cool. I appreciate trying to incorporate action into this since this is an action-based adventure genre that you're pulling from here. We then all reunite as Mom finishes fixing the ship and officially becomes the new pilot after the previous pilot went to the farm. Went to a big ranch. Mom fixes the ship and everyone agrees we need to have the priority here be taking the airship to the heart of Pando. However, once we're done, no one says we can't also help Jaeger get to the other side of the mountains. I like seeing Ethan bond with his grandpa. I appreciate the supportive bad dating advice still being toxic bad advice. We could have easily had the outdated, a boy liking a boy, what's happening? We could have done that. They didn't, and I appreciate it. It's nice to feel it be normalized, and it still fit everything nicely, where as soon as I relaxed and, Grandpa's not gonna, boys and boys don't hold hands and kiss, his advice is still awful. Put someone you like in danger and then save them, and you'll look like a hero, and Ethan points out how that's definitely a toxic way to start any relationship. I really liked that. And through that scene, we have Jaeger wanting to show Ethan how to use his flamethrower device that he built. Dad gets scared and freaks out and it becomes this big fight. Ethan tries to cut the tension by telling everyone, let's play a game of Primal Outpost. And it's one of my favorite scenes with some of my least favorite dialogue in the movie. All 3 generations are playing this game. Grandpa thinks it's about combat. The dad thinks it's about preserving the crops and destroying the pests. Ethan is trying to get it through their heads that they're both wrong. There's no monsters to slay. There's no villains. It's about finding a strategic way to harmonize your existence with your environment. In the tabletop game, they encounter a spider. The grandpa's suggestion is, let's kill it. The dad's suggestion is, let's keep it away from the crops and kill it. It gets a little messy when grandpa thinks he can use beasts as weapons, and he's also asking for a crossbow. But I like the sentiment of both of them are aggressive in their own way and doing damage in their own way, and it's frustrating to Ethan. I really like that scene. I then really don't like the dialogue of, well, if there's no good guys and bad guys, this is bad storytelling. I'm not a fan of that feeling of let's get ahead of those tweets and review angry video things. It pulls me out of it. And also, no, every story has heroes and villains, protagonists and antagonists, heroes and villains, whatever you want to call them. A hero is a central protagonist. A villain is a central antagonist. The antagonists are still everybody but Ethan, Mom, and the dog. Everyone takes a turn being an antagonist, and the key antagonists, or the villains, they don't have to have great songs and scary henchmen in the background. The villains are Jaeger and Searcher. I found it kind of messy. I wish we didn't go for that meta commentary because it was doing so great on its own. It's my favorite scene in this movie with my least favorite dialogue. I really love that scene too for bringing Searcher into the fold of, you're not doing this right either, both as a dad but also as a farmer. But I really like that message and sentiment. By killing the spider, now nothing's here to eat the locust and you lose all your resources. You guys lost the game. I really love that scene. Everything outside of that last couple of beats, that scene does such a great job at establishing how outdated grandpa and dad are. The world needs a different solution. Ethan needs a different solution, but it also cements the theme of we need to live harmoniously with our environment. There are always bad guys. There are always villains. There are always antagonists in every story. I will die on that hill. There's even one in Lilo and Stitch, and I'm making a video about that. We then also, we undercut the mom again. We get to the acid lake. It's a thing that stopped Jaeger from traversing the world in the past. We finally have this airship. We're gonna fly through it. Sounds like we need a great pilot like Mom, right? No, it could have still worked if Mom piloted most of the way through and then they needed help from the creatures to get through part of it. But Mom doesn't pilot their way through the acid lake. These little bubble boys do, and they're super cute. And I really like the scene. It's a great example of how we can harmoniously solve this problem with others, and it starts to set up we are doing something good by going in this direction. I was worried for a minute it was the bladder and not the stomach. That all looks like piss. Because isn't stomach bile... Am I really going to Google this? Oh, well, I learned something today. My degree is in musical theater. It's not in science. It's not in medicine. I liked that scene a lot. I just wish this also was a moment for Mom to be the pilot. I feel like Mom's just really under-acknowledged or developed. She talks about how she would fly through fire for her family, and she doesn't. It's a bummer. The creatures float the airship across the acid lake, the stomach that I thought was a bladder. We also get attacked by the tentacle monsters again. We learned that an effective weapon is to throw pando berries at them. Just like how we saw one burnt splat, you can also throw them at these creatures. I liked the tossing the ball and hitting it like a bat with your shovel more than teaching him to throw. I felt like it was a little silly and a little distracting. And again, I feel like he would have athletic ability from his training as a child, but also just from being a farmer. I liked seeing them work together. It also sets up a lot of things really well. It does form a nice bonding moment between Jaeger and Searcher, and they celebrate with age-appropriate drinks. And we also get a lovely moment with Ethan and his mom, Meridian. You know, she lets him drive a little bit. You know, he has a bumpy time of it and everything. It's a really nice scene. I love how his mom is the first voice of support and chase that feeling of what you're feeling. Do what you want to do. I really love that scene. I still feel like the mom is underutilized a little bit. I also really enjoy exploring at its core why farming. Oh, well, I like being outdoors, being able to grow something and make it what I need, and I want to pass this legacy down to my son, and realizing they have a lot more in common than they think. Then pointed out by Ethan and his mother that they have a lot more in common than they think, in a negative way too. I like seeing that feeling of what was lost in that 25 years and what was already missing in the first 15 before he vanished. We start to discover that Pando isn't getting weaker the further in they get. It's actually getting stronger as it's coordinated at the heart. It's a literal heart, turns out, but it's stronger there mysteriously. All the energy is being focused there, fending off the creatures that are trying to attack the source of the Pando. Their conclusion here is Pando isn't sick, Pando is at war, and we gotta even the odds. And in a brilliant move, after seeing what happens when you hit Pando with your shovel as a baseball bat with your dad and you start to bond, it also turns into smoke that damages the creatures. Then Searcher literally weaponizes Pando. Even though it turns out it was destroying the planet, it still did a lot of good. Now he's turned it into a weapon, and I loved that natural progression there. I thought it was really clever, and it's the dead opposite of Primal Outpost, and it just completely ignores everything that Ethan wants. More so when he says, hey, Ethan, join me. I'll show you how to shoot it. It's like pesticides back on the farm. We're just killing a pest. And Ethan doesn't want to do this. He doesn't think this is the right move. Again, his mom encourages him to trust his instinct, follow his gut. This causes Ethan and Searcher to have a fight, and while Searcher says he doesn't want Ethan to be like Jaeger, Ethan doesn't want to be like him either. It gives us this big moment. Ethan kind of runs away, and it's interesting to see him kind of like surf skate his way out of there on the creatures. Searcher chases after him, and they chase each other down. They start to have their confrontation, their heart to heart. And I think this kind of sums up what's lacking for me in this movie, besides, you know, one too many self-referential jokes and not enough mom. The apology that Searcher is ready to acknowledge and give to his son gets cut off by the revelation that they are now on the other side of the mountains. There's a giant turtle staring at them. The turtle having the world on its back, I know, is like a mythological thing. It's been brought up in a lot of visuals. It's even in Aladdin and the King of Thieves on the Vanishing Isle. It's on the back of a turtle. I really like the visual. I love that revelation. I wish we got the full talk and apology. It's literally cut short. Dad stopped talking. There's a giant turtle staring at us. We do discover right then and there, they start to piece together. Pando is actually on a heart. We went through an actual stomach. Those creatures are an immune system. We live on the back of a living thing. we are a piece of a greater whole. We did something bad. We're giving the turtle that we live on arrhythmia or a clogged artery or heart damage, and they realize the solution here is they need to stop Pando. They need to cut it off at the source and think of something else. I do like trying to keep that lesson in a fun magic fantasy setting. A cynical part of me worries that it removes a little bit of audience accountability as we move forward after the movie, but I like it in the moment. I like the revelation, and more importantly, because I thought that was a metaphor, not a direct foreshadow, I like seeing the characters realize this. However, Ethan and Searcher are the only ones out here who can see the turtle. Everyone else is back on the ship, guns ablazing, seemingly saving the day. When they return, all Jaeger hears is, "We did the thing that you wanted to do your whole life." He gets mad and wants to go see it for himself, makes it all about him. They don't know what they saw. There's no way that's what you saw. And everyone else turns their back on the family as soon as Jaeger leaves. And I like that his self-centeredness, his obsession pulls him away from his family when they needed a guardian, a warrior, a protector the most. Because then suddenly Callisto turns on everybody with the crew. She refuses to listen, turns on the family, locks them in a closet. It takes them a very long comical time to escape. Shout out to Legend the dog. I feel like I would rather have more scenes with our characters or more scenes with our society than to have a momentary, still constantly goofy, slapsticky mutiny kind of moment. It was an odd way of, we need to see it for ourselves, or denying it, or we don't believe you, or this is an inconvenient truth. That was just a part that just didn't really sit right in my brain, but I appreciate the sentiment. And it didn't make the visuals any less great, because these characters have always been a source of support, a place that we trust, and then suddenly they're all glowing green and they're launching, weaponized Pando, and we all know that this is bad now, and they have their own brief little moment of a villain. Callisto almost looks like Scar, and they look like her henchmen, as like the powder is glowing green around them. It's a cool little visual. It's very brief. It's undercut with a couple of slapsticky moments, but I like what we were going for. And it does give Jaeger his moment to give up on ever seeing what it's like on the other side of the mountains, give up on his dream, his obsession, his quest, and double back to help his family, essentially do giant heart surgery. Searcher is going to give up his discovery, his legacy for the future, for his son. I love that dialogue. I love that revelation. I love that moment. Right as his shovel breaks and he doesn't think he's going to be able to succeed, Jaeger shows up. Let's do this together. He pulls out the pickaxe that they use to mountain climb. It's a nice little moment. And what I really like about it, this work they have to do, it's hard work. You can see it in the visuals of the characters. They're getting like kind of shocked while they're hitting the Pando. It's painful. We don't know if it's going to work. It makes me appreciate the sacrifice in a fundamental change this big. They finally crack it open. The creatures finally get to do what they're supposed to do, which is dive in and be the immune system for this giant turtle. And we have a maybe we were too late psych out moment. It's very effective visually. It's devoid of all color. Hope is lost. No one knows what to do. It's very quiet. And then the warm light starts to come back as the little goopy boys who unblazed the blaze trails, and then suddenly the heart is active. Kind of speaks to the odd choice to make Callisto go against everybody for a while. She kind of just sees it at a better angle as a heart now that it's beating and functioning and all the Pando is gone. Seeing it as a heart, seeing it beat, brings this understanding to everybody. I do like that. Maybe we didn't need her to turn against us. It was funny that Callisto just needed a better look at it. And if I turn my head like this, it does look like a heart. It was just kind of silly. The heart is fixed. The psych out is effective. I'm kind of torn. I like the idea of, now that we've saved the day, let's go see the turtle. There's also a part of me that's like, you've now destroyed your energy, your fuel, your gasoline to get home. I don't think you should be using the resources to take a peek at the turtle and show it to the grandpa. I think the grandpa's arc is complete by never seeing it, or seeing it again later with Ethan in the epilogue. It was odd to double back. It was nice though, so nice to see Jaeger not look at the turtle. He's just kind of staring at the ocean, but he's not fixed on anything, and he's just talking to his son. I kind of feel like he had to give that up, but that's just me. And then everybody returns back, and we jump forward 1 year later for an epilogue. Again, I feel like if we had trimmed down some of the silly closet stuff and the mutiny from the crew, things like that, we'd have time to expand on the epilogue more. Because I didn't notice it until the second time I watched the movie to take notes. We're using the jet engine as a wind turbine to light up the city in a world without Pando. And I'm like, oh, the wind. Well, then shouldn't we have seen like using like sailcloth or, kind of pseudo parasailing through? And then I realized that would look like Treasure Planet. I just pitched Treasure Planet to myself. Should I watch that movie? We see the world a year later. Ethan has been out exploring the world beneath with the guy that he's been crushing on, and that's really nice to see. His friends are there. It has like an interesting kind of Greenpeace-y feel. They're removing the dead roots of the Pando. It had this really positive, optimistic feel to it, and the future just feels so bright. I love that ending sentiment, and then we cut back to Searcher's farm, now no longer growing Pando. He now just has a bunch of different crops, and just looking at it is visually fulfilling, and it instantly translates, to me anyway, the man who loves to farm so damn much gets to farm a bunch of different things. That just makes so much sense. There's a gag where Jaeger goes to his ex-wife who moved on, who's hot, and so is her husband. They're both hot. And I'm like, It felt like a nice copacetic kind of moment. If nothing else, it's closure. But I like seeing Searcher and Jaeger picking the crops, tossing a tomato like a ball, goofing around and having fun. But they're both in their element in their own way, working together. It was just really rewarding to see. Again, it blew my mind that like I didn't even think, wouldn't the guy who likes farming so much want to cultivate different kinds of crops? I just wish that I didn't feel like Jaeger getting what he wanted ultimately put him on this path. It should have been him sacrificing that, and now we don't have fuel anymore and we need to get home. We can't jeopardize going out and coming back in. You just have to believe me. That would have been a great final step of healing. I still really like the epilogue though. And like I said, I really liked the movie. I would give it probably around like a B minus, almost a B. There's a couple of scenes you could have trimmed down to save some time. I wish you had built more of society and what's at risk here other than just, oh, okay, like we need TVs and radios and coffee makers and stuff. It was serviceable. You could have explored it a little more. I wish we'd gotten that second flashback in that old-timey animation scene. Again, you could have played with the music so well. I have so many ideas for that just come off my brain that I wish they had done. But that's just nitpicking. And honestly, personally, I don't think this should have been a movie. I think this would have been a really great miniseries with such a great twist. You could have like paced it out better, gotten to know the characters more, life before, life after. It's such a bummer that it was given such a huge disadvantage from the get-go, especially from a theater standpoint or a theater going standpoint. And I'll never call it a bad thing that I wanted more, because I want more from these characters. I want them to interact more. I want the mom to be the pilot. I would have loved to have seen Mom and Ethan work on a wind turbine together, or like everybody kind of takes their expertise and creates a new reliable energy source together, as opposed to just here it is, because it solves the solution. Because always in the back of my mind throughout this movie, because you're going for a very realistic theme despite your fantasy approach, my mind kept taking you to what is society going to look like without this energy source. But I loved the design of Pando. It would have been interesting to have seen what it was originally there for, and seeing it still grow in certain places, because again, you can't kill the spider because when the locusts show up, you can't get rid of all of Pando. It just would have been cool to have seen what it was originally there for. Like even the first time Searcher touches it, it shocks him, like it was interesting to see like how it's not meant to be picked, but they found a way to do it with a shovel. There's so many little things where it's like, oh, we use tools to like force this thing to be our batteries, and then realizing, oh, we really shouldn't have done that, huh? I think as heavy-handed as it feels sometimes, that environmentalist message needs to be heavy-handed. Given the unnecessary hostility, I just wanted to take a look at the movie and watch it and just talk about it. I think it definitely has some bumps and some tweaks I would make here and there, but nothing major. I just think it was done really dirty. And even now I hate like pulling myself out of like talking about the story to talk about the things surrounding the story. I think it's good. I think the performances were great. Really the only weird thing with the performances is Jake Gyllenhaal was an odd choice. He has like a much younger voice. Searcher makes a comment at one point that he's like a 40-year-old man, and I'm like, Jake Gyllenhaal does not sound like a 40-year-old man in this. I wish we could have seen more of society as it was. Again, it was odd to see the humble farmer who discovered energy be told to be more humbled, but I like how it was the personal level of your son isn't going to be like you. You're behaving just like your father in your own way. Sure, you're not jacked and handsome and, you know, burning things with a flamethrower and climbing a mountain. You're still behaving just like him in a completely different tactic. I loved that. But again, after turning red and Encanto, it feels like you're scratching the surface next to a canyon that's been carved out. Does that make sense? It's unfortunate that you can take that steampunky animation combination from like Treasure Planet and now this and equate it to box office disaster, because I like that visual. I think that's really interesting. I think you can do a lot with steampunky looking stuff, and I wish they had done a little more with that. But it's still good. It's a good time. I just wish it didn't have those kind of jokes that's like really hard on itself, like those self-referential things I felt like didn't need to be there. I think to get that A out of me, cut some of the awkward self-referential jokes, give mom more presence here, get rid of the dead pilot, now it's mom moment, and the grandpa never sees life on the other side of the mountain, or he does at the end with his son and his grandson in this new world that they've cultivated 5 years later as opposed to 1 year later. I also think 5 years later would have been a really nice thing to see. Or hell, 25 years later, he's old and they finally like, oh, they took this like safe passage either by like flying or by like space steampunk sailboat. Safe way to take him to the other side of the mountain, and he can finally see it, and now we got to see it without damaging the planet or his family. Just a couple little extra things, but that's just me. Again, I worry that second flashback of how Jaeger fell into the land of the center of the Journey Earth does make me worry that it was something wrong with the animation budget, so they had to go with like showing fancy storyboarding, so who knows. But I still really enjoyed it. I still highly recommend it. I'd love to know what people think. Again, I don't think it's like the greatest thing I've seen, but it's definitely not bad and it's definitely not average. But I'd love to know your guys' thoughts in the comments. I'd really like to know if you like these kind of review videos. I know I did one last year about Encanto. I feel like that was more a reflection on Encanto than me and my thoughts and my beautiful personality. But let me know. Don't forget to like and subscribe, ring the bell and all that good stuff. If you want to hang out with me while I stream games, I have a gaming channel, Bill Chill Gaming, that's linked in the description. If you want to support me, you can check out thethirdbill.com. I have merch there, a place to donate. Or if you want to donate here, you can always leave a super thanks. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you liked my thoughts. I hope they made sense. Was there something that I missed or something you liked that I didn't cover or something you didn't like that I didn't cover or something you agree with? Let me know in the comments. I love reading the comments. And yeah. Hope to see you next time I upload or go live. Don't forget, just like every video and stream that I do, there's a link to a card in the description that will send you to resources for social awareness and education, mental health and crisis lines, Trevor Project resources, things like that, should you or someone you know need them. I hope everyone's staying safe. Remember to wear a mask if you go out, be mindful of others, and remember to take care of yourselves, please. Whew.